Hello, writers, and welcome to Writing for Screens. Today's live episode, I have thoughts. Survival is triumph. My name is Glenn Gers, and I am the Chief Operating Everything here at Writing for Screens, a channel in which I am trying to take the skills, tools, and insights that I had to figure out for myself in a 25-year career writing for TV and movies. On my way out of that business, I am leaving behind what I can in the form of lesson videos. I have built up a small library. Here is a screen grab of my main channel page. If you scroll down, you will see that there are 3 playlists. The first 3 playlists, as you scroll down, are Screenwriting Essentials, Screenwriting Tools, Skills, and Craft, and The Process, Being a Writer. These 3 playlists have a total of about 50 10-minute videos. Each one is what I call a lesson. It is simply a little video essay on what I know about any of the topics from genre, flashbacks, character, dialogue, the process, the way that you create a ritual. Everything that I know, I have tried to boil down into very simple, practical questions and steps that you can try out for yourself to see if they work for you. Because the secret is, there is no secret. You have to figure it out for yourself. Every artist must make their own path. All I can do is tell you some stuff I've learned or figured out or seen in case it's useful for you. You will have to figure out for yourself. You try things, you use them, you don't. Whatever it is for you, that's what this is here for. These lessons are there for you 24/7 for free. And I urge you to please take a look at them. Every one of them has a great big colorful thumbnail that says the topic. How to organize a project, dialogue, character, whatever it is, it'll be there. It's the title, it's the thumbnail. You can scroll through. Please watch these. They are the point. When I got done with those, I then started doing live streams every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I am here live talking about a different topic every week. This week, I'm talking about survival. And before we get into that, I'm going to say a couple of hellos. Yeah, that's really all there is to say. I'm going to say a couple of hellos. Hello, Akari and Pelicans and Michael. It is good to see all of you. Very great to be here to talk about the issue of artistic survival. And I will tell you why this came up. We here in America, at least, we're going through some turmoil. We're going through some hard times, and I personally believe they are going to get harder. I believe that we are in fairly mean times. We're in dysfunctional and difficult times in which people are having a harder time making our society work. One of the worst places that shows up is for people who are doing creative work. It's just hard. It is really, really hard to do. And almost all the stuff that you see here on YouTube or any kind of how-to stuff, it's almost all about basically how are you going to succeed? How are you going to win? How are you going to get more likes and viewers and money and success? And the truth is, I worked a long time. I had a 25-year career, really at the crest of the movie business. Starting in the mid 1990s, going through till 2019, but before I got any pay for that, I spent 12 years between college and getting some professional writing jobs, office temping, working for various companies, doing whatever I could to struggle and survive. 12 years. And I had started writing in high school. So I had about 18 years in which I was quite sure I was going to make it. I was going to get the clicks and the likes before there were clicks and likes, that I was going to make a living as a writer. And then there's 18 years before that actually started. And what I learned, which is sort of valuable because it gave me knowledge as a pro that a lot of people don't really think about, and that's that the advice, follow your passion to build your career, and your work should make the world a better place. All the things that we get taught now in the 21st century that kids are taught about the world, those are the concerns of people with insane privilege. Truly, being able to follow your passion to make it your career is insanely unlikely. It's very difficult to do. And the number of compromises and the number of difficulties you will face in doing that are extraordinary. Let's put it this way. It's hard right now to be a lawyer or a doctor or any number of things which people actually need on a day-to-day basis. As much as I love the arts, the truth is, when you're sick, you don't want to go to the nearest novelist. You want to go to the nearest doctor. And yet even doctors are having a hard time surviving, making themselves a safe place and a safe world to live in. A way to raise a family, perhaps, or to live a life, to be able to do what you care about. These are things that are extraordinarily difficult to do. And the idea that we are pushing this message of that's the bottom line, that's the goal, that's what everyone should be able to do, is truly, I think, unfair. I think it's mean, it's brutal to be pushing what is essentially a lie. I was an office temp, like I said, or working in offices and stuff for 12 years. And that's what, coming out of an Ivy League college, and I had an agent through most of that. I mean, I got an agent in the first year or two out of college. I had supportive family. I was in the center of the arts. I had connections, and it still took 12 years. And maybe that's a problem with me. I don't know, but I know too many people who struggled and didn't get even the amount of success I did, which was not that good. And I met a lot of people at a higher level with me who are still struggling. You would be amazed how even among professionals, among highly paid professionals, the daily life is a struggle to survive. You never know when the jobs are going to stop or when the industry is going to change. And especially now, it is truly changing a lot. So what bothers me is then that the idea of that when if you succeed, it's because what you did was the best. And this concept of the meritocracy as the business of the arts is not really true. A lot of good stuff does get made. A lot of good stuff doesn't get made. And a lot of stuff that gets made isn't that good. And the main problem is, of course, what's good. But the issue is that what gets taught to us is this concept that if you succeed, you are good, and therefore, if you don't succeed, you are not good. You are, in fact, bad. It is, in fact, your fault. You didn't grind hard enough. You didn't network hard enough. You didn't write the thing that fit the formula. You didn't write the thing that broke the formula. Whatever it is, there's always a reason that we put it back on the artist and say, you failed, you're bad. And I'm saying this as someone who managed to succeed a fair amount, and got both lucky and worked hard. But I think that this is a cultural question, and I personally would like to change the system a bit. I don't even know if you can. The question of values comes into it. It certainly is true that I believe our society should be a little more supportive of all of its people. However, when it comes to the arts, that gets really tricky because there's values. There are values. There's only so much that anyone can watch. There's only so much that anyone can do. So I don't even know that I'm not talking so much about changing the system, changing the world, which we have strangely been indoctrinated in and propagandized to believe that somehow individuals are responsible to change the world. I am not sure that that's possible. But my main message here is just give yourself a break. That's what I'm really trying to get to. Give yourself a break about whether or not you are going to win, whether or not you are going to succeed. Recognize the game. The game is not that the rewards go to the best, so that if you don't get rewards, you are not doing enough. You are not figuring out the secret. You are not working hard enough. To tell you the truth, that message is provided by two groups of people. The winners, who desperately need to believe that they are somehow better, and that's why they won. Sometimes true, sometimes not. I think you'll find the ones who are genuinely good tend to be very humble about that and very recognizing the amount of luck and chance and fragility of their winning. But mainly what you get is this vast middle section of the world, which is selling the hope of winning. And I mean that by selling. I don't know if you've noticed this. On here on YouTube, any form of influencers, any form of how-to, the consistent big winning topic, the thing that people make their whole careers doing, is how to have a hit online. The main way to have a hit online is to be selling how to have a hit online. The number of this is how you game the system, this is how you figure it out, this is what you do in order to succeed. Most of those people are not succeeding except by selling this idea of succeeding. It is one of the reasons that I don't charge for what I'm doing, unless there's expenses that I need to pay for. I believe it's important not to sell that message. I believe it's really important to sell the message of, frankly, let me see if I can get this. Yeah. The immense value of just taking care of yourself, surviving, being able to live, being able to find a way to do your work. That's hard. Most of us have to take care of our families. And I, by the way, I do not mean that as a breadwinner sense. I mean that all families are spending a lot of their time taking care of each other. They're trying to help each other. They're trying to be involved with each other. They are obligated to each other. And even if you don't have a family, and many people don't, there is your community. There is your efforts to find food to eat and shelter to live in. These are things that take up most of our day, and sometimes more than that. And as a result, the idea that you're going to also find extra time for a whole other full-time career as an artist is hard. That's hard. You are already doing more than average. If you are trying to be an artist while you are trying to survive, you are already juggling more than is frankly humanly possible. So I'm just trying to say to you, give yourself a break. Be kinder to yourself about your winning. If you are surviving at all, if you are able to find a way to do your work now and then in your lunch breaks, or when you get up or when you get home, sometime when you can get just a teeny bit of work done, that is triumph. You are doing well. And what results from that is essentially irrelevant. It's not that you shouldn't try, it's not that you shouldn't work towards things, but you should recognize that you are already winning if you are doing it. And that there is something important about giving yourself some credit and taking some joy in the fact that you are working to survive. And sometimes, honestly, you need to put aside your work to do the surviving stuff. It happens. It's all right. It doesn't mean you can never go back to it, but do not endanger your life. Do not endanger your relationships, and do not endanger your health in order to do this work. Try to find some kind of balance, some kind of system in which we can get a little bit done. Just a little bit. In thinking about this, I was reminded of an essay I read in a book called Tiny Beautiful Things. This is my paperback copy of it. Tiny Beautiful Things, Advice on Love and Life from Dear Sugar by Cheryl Strayed. This is a fabulous book. Here's a picture of the cover. What this is Cheryl Strayed, who wrote a memoir called Wild, which was made into a movie. she found herself getting the job of being an advice columnist. And she wrote under the name Dear Sugar. And this is a collection of people's letters to her and the answers she wrote, which are short essays on various topics. They're beautifully written. They're very, very powerful and inspiring. Most of them aren't about arts. They're about life, love and life, as she says. But there was a fascinating essay. It's called "How You Get Unstuck." It's like the second or third essay in the book, in it she's talking to a mother who has lost a child. His child has died very, very young, and she's talking about her experience, Cheryl Strayed, when she spent a year trying to be a mentor. She was a professional mentor for a group of middle school girls who were at risk, and about the lesson she learned, in which, as she said, the triumph, the goal, is simply to not end up dead, in jail, or abused or abusing. That if you, she says, let me see if I can find the quote. Basically, working at Walmart, working a job, living your life, that's it. That's the triumph. That's the win. And it's said so beautifully in this essay. I urge you to read it. It's a good book. This essay I found particularly powerful, talking about the importance of adjusting your goals, adjusting your expectations to the point at which your survival, in which is flourishing, in which the winning, the triumph, is not failing, not dying, not becoming further messed up than we all already are. Our sense of money for art is absurd, and it's promoted in an unhealthy way. Our sense of money for anything is absurd, but I just wanted to point out that money is primarily of value to an artist, so you have time to work. That's the point of money. The point is, like, if you have a day job, you have less time and energy and mental space and ability to work, to do your creative thing. If you don't have money, you suffer. You are hungry or cold or wet or in danger. And so that's why you want money as an artist. You don't want money as some kind of proof of art. That's not related. And the way that we know this is if you think about this very strange fact, but the amount of people in the arts, in the entertainment world, who have gained money and success and have truly messed up lives and personalities, who have deeply, deeply messed up. In other words, the money didn't fix it. And even the art didn't fix it. And that's what I want to point out. The money won't do it, the success won't do it, and the art won't do it. You need to value taking care of yourself. You need to value surviving and thriving as the best you can under whatever conditions you are in. Try to take care of yourself. Try to make that's honestly the priority. That's the lifeboat under which everything else will survive. Even moderate success in art and entertainment tends to wreck your life. You cannot believe how hard it is. It is immensely demanding. And it messes you up. So try to, if you're lucky and if you're determined and if you work it out that you get that, recognize that doesn't take care of everything else. You still need to take care of yourself. The biggest question really is, what are you making art for? What are you an artist for? And I just want to, this is a quote goes around the internet a lot. Kurt Vonnegut Jr., who was a novelist back in the 60s, 1960s through the 1990s, I guess. A magnificent writer, very, very stylized, very weird. But he also wrote some great essays and made some great speeches. And this speech, which this actually, I believe it was a letter to a high school. But the quote is, "Practice any art, Music, singing, dancing, acting, drawing, painting, sculpting, poetry, fiction, essays, reportage, no matter how well or badly, not to get money and fame, but to experience becoming, to find out what's inside you, to make your soul grow. There it is. I don't need to say anything else. That is the point. Let's try to value survival. Let's try to value creating while surviving. The truth is, in the arts, you will find that the real value comes from accumulation, not from having a hit. You may or may not have a hit. A hit may or may not mean that your other work is good. The main thing is accumulating your work, continuing to do your work, reflecting on the world that you are managing to live in. These are the point of doing this. And I don't think we talk enough about that, about how anyone can do that. Anyone. And it's really important that you recognize that if you're trying to do it, because it's so easy to just say, there's them who are winning and me who is not. And that is missing the point. It's important to remember that art does not solve or replace your life. It's not going to fix your life. If you manage to succeed in art, you still can have a messed up life. So it's really important that you take some good-sized portion of your work, good-sized portion of your life, and devote it to survival, to your health, to your happiness, to your ability to live and have whatever kinds of relationships or lack thereof that you choose, that you want, that you can. Because so much of our lives are not within our control. And it's really, really a very, very daily value, which is not, frankly, expressed enough. Part of the work of an artist is creating their own life. Learning how to survive as an artist, that takes work, that takes study, that takes exploration and practice. You got to figure out your version of that, because everyone's is different. Everyone is in different circumstances. Everyone has different abilities. Everyone has different taste, and therefore you need to create your life in such a way that you can do your thing as best you can while you live. That's it. That is the whole game. Everything else is gravy. Everything else is frosting. It's lovely. It's great if you get it, but the important thing is to be able to survive and do your work. However that is, whether or not you are acclaimed or even seen, it doesn't matter. Nothing matters as much as your survival and your continued work. That's it. So that's my message. Now I'm going to discuss some comments. 500th video. Is it? Good Lord. I did not know that. Wow. Well, there you go. Accumulation. I started making these early 2020. And so it's been 5 years. It's about 100 a year, which is a lot. I don't know. Wow. 500th video. Thank you so much, Tomorrow Kiddo. Hello, Willie. Hello, Wolf Powers. Hello, Imogen. Thank you for the flowers. Wolf says, I'm glad I missed the quote, make the world a better place message. My purpose as a novelist is primarily to entertain and a little bit to inform, because that's the kind of fiction I enjoy reading. The improve the world thing, this may be my personal experience of it because I grew up in the 1960s, but I believe that's actually a lot of when this particular sense that we were each individually responsible to save the world began to get more popular. And there's a lot of theories about why that is. And I'm not sure that it's entirely true. Certainly people were trying to make the world a better place during the world wars and the Depression and all sorts of things. But I think that there was less of a sense that you were individually supposed to move the needle, that you were individually responsible, and that your life and your work had to be woven together into some form of of world-shaking accomplishment. That's just messed up. And yet everybody is talking about it now. It's like that's, you talk to students in high school and that's what they're being taught. Is like, well, when you start to think about a career, think about how you can, change the world. And whenever somebody starts a company, they're always like, this company will change the world. It's very hard to change the world. It's not that it's not important to try and make the world a better place. That's a good thing. But I remember my father-in-law, who worked as a repairing boilers, and he once talked about when he was young, and at some point he got his first job, and he was living in the city and making his way, and he said something. He was telling me this story, and he said, we were citizens. That like clicked in me, because this guy who was a boiler repairman and so proud of being a citizen, of being a person in the world, not the leader, not the guide, not the savior, just a citizen, just a person living their life and having their place in the world and being able to sustain that. That's winning. That is victory. So I just want to talk about that. The media advertises success. Absolutely. And that's a weird thing, but it's a very American, very capitalist, a very Western thing. I think the improve the world philosophy has done some harm to great art. I'm thinking of great shows that got bogged down in preaching their personal values to middle America. I definitely think that can happen. I think sometimes that's good. I mean, I think probably all art preaches some values. The value could be entertainment. The value could be, winning fights. There's a lot of art about beating the bad guy. But I do believe that this notion of the importance of art. Well, honestly, I've read 19th century novelists and 16th century painters all talking about the importance of art, the way that it changes things. So I can't say that it's just recently. Michael says, years ago, I talked to a violinist performing on the street. She told me, I love what I'm doing. Music is my life. Damn, there you go. That's it. That is it. There you go. Win. Thank you, Michael. Writing is at times a high. Yes, completely. Sometimes it's a necessity in order to stay sane. Also true, Wolf. Actually finishing something is a big thrill. Having other people read it and like it is the icing on the cake. Completely agree. Yes, absolutely correct. I do creative work because I think I would break down without it. It is my mental health medicine. Adam Lum says 500 videos. That's amazing. Wow. I did not know, but pretty cool. Skepular says, paracosms are worlds of the imagination from childhood. J.R.R. Tolkien wrote his down. Do you have one? I do. Okay, Skepular, this is interesting because the answer is I have too many. I am a little bit, I don't know, ADD or something. I'm not sure, but I am constantly making up worlds. I was constantly making up worlds from my childhood. Most of them were stolen, stolen from things I liked. Agatha Christie mysteries and Sherlock Holmes and James Bond, the Hardy Boys. I was very into mysteries for a while. And then in my high school era, I don't know if that still counts as childhood, I started to get into American humorists, the New Yorker, the Algonquin crowd, Benchley, Perlman, Thurber. And that world became my a paracosm. Although weirdly, that was a paracosm that was a real thing. It was just a gone thing. It was a thing that was happening in the 1920s through the 1940s in New York City. I was in the 1970s in New York City. The entire world that came from was more or less gone, but it was a world I imagined myself in. Tomorrow Kiddo says, on the Save the World, as a Gen X, I had that too, but my Gen Z children hate that concept. Community is where they are at. Yes, that is cool. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening amongst especially the Gen Z and Gen Alpha kids who are dealing with the philosophies and expectations that came out of the boomers, the post-war kids. Um, and it's hard to see when you're in the midst of it. I'm curious. It seemed so clear and obvious in the 60s and 70s that we were on the right path. I do believe a lot of what was happening then was on the right path, but at the same time, I think anything when it becomes oppressive, when it becomes a full-time commitment of the society, it tends to steamroll its better angels. It tends to become something of a pressure cooker that is not healthy. Hello, Lake Filter. Paul Schrader said in the 60s, people looked at artists for answers. I think that was a general mid-century thing. I think that they looked at filmmakers more in the 60s and 70s. In the 30s, 40s, 50s, it was more novelists, I think. I don't know. Interesting. Wolf Powers says, save the world is not a recent philosophy and art. There's Dickens. I think it goes all the way back to Greeks and Aristotle. That is true. 19th century novels often had very heavy social agendas. Certainly Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Dickens, Zola, Balzac, they had their eyes set on society. My writing all preaches to the choir, Wolf Powers says. It's a relatively small choir, but it's a big world, and so you can write for a small niche and do okay. Damn right. That's excellent. Yeah, so that's the topic for the day. Open for questions in our next section of time before I close it down. Please feel free to ask me anything. Artists were innovators too in the mid-century era, so there's a crossover with inventors, etc. That's true. There was in the 20th century especially a sense that there was a need a need for revolution, a need for change, a need to shape the world. I wonder about that sometimes. I do. I wonder sometimes. I do believe that we need to continue to make our world a better place. I think there's a difference between trying to make your world a better place and feeling responsible, obligated to actually change the world. Those are two different things. When I was a kid and the environmental movement was sort of getting hyped up and started, I remember thinking, I'm not going to be able to clean up all the pollution in the world. I can try not to litter. I can try to clean up a little bit here and there, but I think first do no harm. First try not to make it worse. Wasn't it sweet when Google started out with "Don't be evil"? I wish that tech had stuck with its 1960s beliefs. Anyway, so yeah, that's what I had to say. I'm open for questions. Otherwise, we'll do a short one, and I'll go write something. Let me know if you guys have anything to ask. I know that the world is deeply, deeply currently heated up. I mean, there's the huge swaths of the U.S. and Europe that are currently completely cooking, and I certainly hope that our relatively small viewing audience right now is not because people are wiped out. It's a weird time. That's all I can say. What's the modern vicious circle? For a while, it was the Cracked website. I never got into Cracked. I was a big Mad fan, and Cracked seemed like a presumptuous wannabe. But I don't. And also, by the way, this is Mad and Cracked were actual physical magazines when I was reading them. But I actually, this is interesting. What is the modern vicious circle? The vicious circle, I believe you're referring to Dorothy Parker and the Vicious Circle, which was a name for about the Algonquin Club. There was a social and intellectual circle in New York City in the 1930s, and that was called the Vicious Circle because they could be pretty mean to each other, but they were always funny. Anyway, I think one of the things that's happened, and this is cool, actually. I've always liked this, but For a while, the cultural centers were physical places. You had, you know, Paris in the 19 teens, and well, actually the turn of the century, and then the 1920s. There were two sort of several waves for Paris. Um, there was Seattle in the 1990s, New York in the 1920s and 30s, I expect. New York had a good run, um, uh, maybe into the 50s. I'm not sure. The point is that there are different places. Vienna at the end of the 19th century. There's been places where cultural groups have come together and made something cool. And I believe that what's happened is that's gone online. In other words, the cultural centers now are happening online. The question is, like, Paris was there, Seattle was there, and it was there before the grunge movement, and it was there after. And this group of people, for a brief moment, met there. The question is, online, is there a place? Like, is there a website which is considered the place? For a little while, it was the metaverse. It was Facebook and then Instagram. Then it seemed to slide over to Twitter, and then it seemed to slide. Now it seems that Twitter has sort of become damaged goods, and they're trying to find a new one. But even then, I think the whole point of the internet is that I'm not sure there is one. The internet itself is a cluster, an online cluster of many, many communities. And some of these communities are producing amazing work, or at least amazing community. Not all. Some are ugly and mean, but some are really supportive and cool. And so the answer is I mean, YouTube, I guess honestly, as a cultural center, YouTube is perhaps one of the most long-standing cultural centers of the 21st century. That's an interesting question, because within YouTube, there's many, many subcategories. But then again, if you think about like New York in the mid-century, Russia in the early part of the 20th century, Berlin in between giant wars, there are Paris for various reasons over the entire 19th and 20th century. These places had subgroups within them also, so maybe that's what it is. It may be that YouTube is the new Paris, the new Seattle, the new Berlin. I don't know. I don't know. That's an interesting question. Or have we broken it? Have we, instead of coming together to make a productive, beautiful thing? Athens back in like the 3rd or 5th century BC, there was a flourishing of culture and philosophy and drama. So is the internet the new one? And if so, how does that work? Or has the internet broken it into the point that there's simply, like Renaissance Italy, a lot of city-states, and they're frankly always vying for power and living their own life. And if you're in Florence, you don't necessarily give a hoot about what's going on in Sicily. I don't know. All right. Michael asks, when dealing with producers, is it worth arguing to get your point across? A very good question. I believe, and this is learned from experience of doing it wrong. I argued so much that I was impossible. And I think the answer is you argue a little. You argue to make sure that you've gotten your point on the table. If it is not picked up, you let it go because you don't own the table. The producer owns the project, or the company owns the project. When you are if you're working with a producer on something that they have not paid for, then you still own your script, and you can say, absolutely not, I'm not doing that. I don't do it. You might lose that producer. But the question is, suppose usually when you're working with a producer, you are being paid. And once you are being paid, they own the property, they own the job, and they frankly own your work. So therefore, you're an employee. And the question would be, how worth it is it to argue with your boss? And the answer should be, hopefully the boss is listening a little, and that when you raise something, they may process it and add it to their agenda. But if for whatever reason you argue something and the boss says, no, I don't want to do that, it's their house, it's their company, it's their project. Your job is to do the best you can on their project. You are an employee. Um, this depends on personalities. Some personalities are very eager to collaborate, but also at the end of the day on a creative project, someone has to be in charge and someone has to make the choices. And no one will like all of those choices being made. Somebody has to say, these are all good possibilities, but I'm choosing this one because I'm in charge and I like this one most for whatever reason. That is the truth of working in the entertainment industry. It may change a little in theater. American theater, they don't have the right to change your script without your permission. In the American film industry, they'll just fire you. like they can buy your script, fire you from it, and hire other people to completely rewrite it. I know this because I have had that happen to me where they've bought my thing and fired me off it, but I've also been hired to destroy the work of some other writer who got created something and then got fired off it. That's what the work is. So the answer is, when dealing with producers, is it worth arguing to get your point across? It is worth arguing politely, if possible, and it's briefly. In other words, yes, you want to make your point, and then if it is not accepted, you accept the power struggle, the power situation, and you move on. You do your job. Communities are how we get things done. I don't see a contradiction between community and fighting big battles. Thumper says. I'm not sure if communities are how we get things done, although once again, when it comes to a creative project, a specific piece of creative work, communities are not usually how you get things done. Usually there's a controlling force. That may be the creative artist, it may be the person with the money, it may be the director who is hired to interpret the script, and they often want to change the script. So that's tricky. But in general, in the world, when you're talking about changing the world, communities are how you get things done. I absolutely agree. Survival is triumph, number one goal. Can you share what makes you thrive and feel alive, happy, content, and excited as well? Yes, absolutely. That's what I do here. That's exactly what I do. I share it. I share my work process. I have done that before. I'm planning to do it shortly. And the thing that makes me happiest is doing creative work. The thing that makes me second happiest is sharing it somehow. But the absolute, like I said, I need it like a drug, like a medicine, possibly like a drug. There's a fine distinction there, but it's real in both cases. I need to do creative work. Need it. Luckily, more and more I'm able to, but especially even when I was the 18 years that I was a student and office temp and employee of many, many, many companies, doing typing and filing and Xeroxing and whatnot, I still had to find a way during the day to sneak in a little creative work on my lunch hour or when nobody was looking at my desk. That's what does it for me. I hope that's true for you too, but whatever it is, you need to know it for yourself. And also, you need it to be a thing you can actually do. For me, one of the most important things about doing creative work is I can do it. If somebody locked me in a room, I could still do it. There's no way to stop someone from doing creative work. I often think, I don't know how he did this, but supposedly Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the famous Russian novelist, 20th century novelist, who was in the gulag, in the prison camps for a long time, and apparently he wrote in his head. I couldn't do it. I would forget each day, but he wrote a book about the gulag in his head, and then when he got out, he wrote a lot of it down. The great thing about creativity is literally no one can stop you from doing it. If you have chosen a form of creativity that requires, $1 billion budget, $100 million budget, you are making it impossible for you to do your thing. And I would suggest that you try and find an art form, a medium that you can have access to under your current situation, under your current circumstances. That's my advice about that. Okay, thank you for the questions. When is the right time to use which tense in a compound sentence? English is not my first language, and I often find the autocorrect squiggly underlined tenses for no rhyme or reason. I will tell you, I am a bad person to ask about this. I actually do not know grammar. I do not know English grammar. I studied a little of it in high school. I mainly zoned out during it because I'm fluent in English, because I read a lot and write a lot. And so therefore I can make things sound like English, like good English, like interesting English, if not proper English, without actually knowing the mechanics. I don't know the names of the parts of sentences. I suspect that, but as far as the right time to use which tense, it would depend on the time of the event being described or the tense of the work as a whole. But it would, I believe, have to do, since the tense, I believe, has to do with time. In other words, is this past or present or future? And therefore, there isn't a right time or wrong time. There's a right time according to the circumstances of the events and the writing. In other words, if the writing is at the same time as the event, it would be present. But if it was described as in the past, it would be past. The question is, can you switch tense inside a sentence? I don't think so. But maybe, he is remembering when they went to the store. But I honestly, I'm bad at grammar. It is quite possible to be a professional writer and not know the first thing about the names of grammar parts. I don't know. I never learned them. I didn't need them. I still don't need them. And I urge you, by the way, to think in terms of how does this play? Because autocorrect is often wrong. Autocorrect doesn't know. Okay. I read critic John Simon was an asshole. That's true. I saw him on Dick Cavett putting many movies down. Yes, that's true. This is back in the 20th century. There was a New York critic, I believe he worked for New York Magazine, named John Simon. He was famous for being very cutting and critical and mean and funny in his reviews. Okay, Tom Lewis says, in a compound sentence, you can use more than one tense. Every verb modifies a separate object or subject. It depends on the narrator's temporal position. From the narrator's temporal position, there are things that have happened even if only 3 seconds ago, past tense, and things that are still happening, present tense. Tom Lewis has given you what sounds to me like a good answer. Okay, now we got to stop the questions. I'm sorry, I asked for questions, now I got to stop them. Getting your work bought, then getting fired, and the power struggle. You just described what Roseanne said happened to her with her show, and she struggled to regain control. Interesting story. This is a tricky one because I know people who either worked for or had friends on the staff of the Roseanne show, and there was a power struggle. But the question is, being in a power struggle does not make you right. From what I understand, much of what Roseanne may have wanted may have been great, but a fair amount of it was just not great. It was either cruel to the people who were working with her or simply impossible to satisfy her demands. That was a hard place to work. And I don't want to say for sure that I know that Roseanne was the victim in that situation. But I honestly don't know, and I do believe that in all such struggles, there is some point that's valid on both sides. Anyway, that's a tricky one, actually, that particular issue. My country means most of your movies aren't available to watch or rent, Glenn, but our broadcast commission put Fracture up in the last 2 weeks, and I watched it. Great work, really enjoyed it. Well, thank you. I am very glad. Yeah. It is hard to find things, even here. Some of my work, like Share, Follow, is very hard to find. Even Disfigured is very hard to find, although that is on Amazon if you want it. YouTube has some possibly pirated, illicit copies of Like, Share, Follow. You might watch it that way. I'm certainly not advising that, but advice for creators who had stage parent who ruined creating during child years. How do they come back to art in adulthood? Wow, that's a powerful question. I would say, and by the way, I would say, by the way, to read this book. This book is full of stuff by Cheryl Strayed, Tiny Beautiful Things, full of advice about things about our past and our present and our lives and struggles. Because the answer is, our parents, in many ways, stage parenting is one way, not appreciating or approving or supporting is another way. There's many, many ways that our parents can mess us up. The question is how to deal with it. To me, it feels like it's very important to have some therapy or support or group that will allow you to understand exactly what happened, because there's a lot of mythology that gets built during our childhoods and in our families and in our relationships. And therefore you have to think, how much of this is somebody else's version of what happened, and how much of it is either my version or what really happened? Because you need to know those things. To a certain extent, what really happened is a matter of interpretation. Sometimes things actually physically happened, but I mean what they meant, what was intended, or what was going on may not be as interpreted by different sides. So then the answer becomes, first you need to understand what happened. You need to understand your side of it and theirs. You need to understand what they think you need to understand what they were doing, as well as what they thought they were doing, or possibly if what they were doing was ill-intended, then you need to understand that. But having had that happen, just remember, first of all, the past is the past. And as much as it may reside in our minds in triggerable patterns, those patterns also, they were built. If they were built, they can be to a certain extent unbuilt or replaced. The pathways which you get triggered into from things that happened to you before they won't ever entirely go away, but you can build a new one, and that takes small steps over time, doing the work and figuring out what you like about it. It's funny, I was just this morning making some notes for a future live stream about the question of knowing what you like. Not knowing what people tell you will succeed. This is really important. Knowing what you genuinely like, what empowers you, electrifies you, excites you, entertains you, takes you out of life for a minute. Those things, everyone's different about that, and there's no right or wrong, but you need to know your authentic one. You need to know what it is that you would do if no one ever was going to see it, that you still want to do. And you have to know the other way that you know this. But there's a couple of videos that might help you on this. One is about talent. In talking about talent, I talk about how you figure out if you have it, and talent and love for something are very often interwoven. The other one I would say is instinct. And the other one is imagination. I will put links to these three down in the description about 10-15 minutes after we get done here, so you can look at those. I would suggest look at those, but then the other thing is just remember it's a process over time. The main thing when you've had damage done to your creative urges, whether through a stage parent or a parent who doesn't believe in you, or a parent who's requiring you to do things, or a partner, or a publishing industry, or a movie industry. All of those things can do you serious damage when you are learning and trying. The answer to all of that is going to be small steps, doing the part you like privately, alone, for yourself, to enjoy the process, the way that a person who loves playing an instrument will want to play that instrument with no one else around, not a performance, playing it for your own practice or satisfaction. What is it that you like to do that way? That's the first step. Then you do that for years. Just do it, and you will come back to art in your adulthood. The other thing I would suggest is having some playfulness. Do something you're bad at. Do something that you don't have, like, if you sculpting, drawing, playing music. Try some things in order to break the taboo of pressure. Try some things at which you fail in order to see that you survive failure. It's really a good idea to fail a little so that you recognize that you have the ability to survive creative failure, because failure is part of creativity. Okay, no more questions. Sorry. When I said something about imposing artist values on Middle America and disharming, Roseanne was one show that came to my mind. As a Midwesterner, I appreciated that show's authenticity, but there was a lot of preaching of West Coast values, and it was sometimes offensive to Midwestern viewers. It could have been better. Interesting. I mean, well, also let's face it. There's, in the Midwest and the West, there are many types of people. The entertainment industry is a very narrow funnel, a bottleneck through which things get, and that is very cliquey, and it is very like-minded. They tend to push certain ideas. It is very difficult to be different or think different in a closed society like the entertainment industry. So I definitely would not deny that there is a set of values which tends to come through the American entertainment industry. But I would also say that there's probably some people in the Midwest who got a big burst of joy from it. It's tricky. It's tricky. Roseanne, there's lots of troubled artists, and Roseanne brought that marvelous Midwestern blue-collar authenticity to American TV in a way that had not been there except for maybe some of Norman Lear's stuff. It was valuable. Unfortunately, as with many things, artists are difficult. They're troubled. They're troublemaking. And sometimes the authenticity or the value or the goodness comes along with some damaged behavior. Okay. Okay. Michael says, I didn't do art for 20 years, but I didn't give up. At 54, I picked up where I left off. Yes, I do believe, unlike ballet, although I expect you could do ballet into your 80s and 90s, but you probably would have to do a different version of it, but that's true of any art. One good thing about creative work is you can do it. You can set it aside and come back to it. It'll be there. And you might be in an interesting new place when you get there. Okay. You are all welcome. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Tomorrow Kiddo says, thank you for answering my question. Solid advice. My situation sadly clear. Therapy done, but needed clear advice from an artist I can trust. Well, I would say, listen to me. This is a great way to go out. But no, seriously, look at in my videos, in my little lesson videos, the section on process, especially the session on process, the third of the three top playlists. It's called Process, Being a Writer. I talk a lot about these things because the point about all of this is going to be whether or not you were damaged as a child, or whether or not you grew up in a society that simply doesn't support creativity. Whatever it is, you can build new pathways in your brain to those parts of you that are real but have been damaged or buried. The way to do it is repeated experience in a safe way, without competition, without judgment. The essence of practice. That's the key. And with that, I will say, everybody, I hope you go write something.